All right, hello again, Algebra 2 people. So today we're going to be talking about just finding domain and range from a graph and writing it in correct notation. Now, there are three different notations we're going to be talking about. Interval notation, which is what we use when we did all the parent functions on the last couple of days with like the parentheses and the brackets. We're also going to be talking about an inequality notation. You guys know what inequalities are, greater than, less than, stuff like that. And then a third one called set builder notation. You definitely need to know how to use and how to recognize all three of them. When you're writing one for like a normal assignment for me, I don't care which one you use, but you definitely need to know how to recognize and how to read all three of them. Okay? So I'm going to go and jump right in here. And what I'm going to do, so on this first page here, these are called one-dimensional problem because we're only talking about like an x value, for instance. When you go to the back page, there'll be some two-dimensional ones when we're going to have to find the domain and the range. But I like starting off with just doing a one-dimensional type thing just to kind of get us in the mode of the three different notations. Now, I'm going to do these a little bit out of order. I'm going to do interval notation first, because that's what we've already kind of seen that. And then I'll do inequality notation, then I'll do set builder. Interval notation, I will say, is probably the most common thing you see. It tends to be the shortest way to write one of these things. That's not always the case, but it's certainly the most common. So here we go. So notice in this first case, notice the filled in circles, first of all. Okay, so what this is saying is x can be anywhere in between -5 and +1. Okay, so this is what I call a sandwich, because x can be, it's kind of like the ham and cheese in between the two pieces of bread. So the bread is your -5 and your 1. And in this case, x can be anywhere in between those things. So my outer thing, since they're both filled in circles, is going to be a bracket on both of them. Remember, if it's filled in, you'll use brackets. If it's open, you can use the parentheses. For the inequality notation, again, this is really why I call this a sandwich, is because if x is between everything, so -5, x is your ham and cheese, and then your 1 over here. Now, all we got to do is put the symbols in. Now, I will say when it's a sandwich like this, when x is between these two things, you'll use less than or equal to on both of them. Okay, and notice it is less than or equal to because of that filled in circle. Now, you might be saying that, well, hold on a minute here. Isn't x greater than -5? Yes, but that's also what that says. If you read that piece of it backwards, x is greater than or equal to -5, so that's why we write it as that kind of sandwich technique. Now, the good news about set builder notation, this is probably one you have not seen before, is it actually uses inequality notation. It's just kind of a fancier way to write it. If you go into upper level math, especially when you get into college stuff, you tend to see set builder notation a little bit more often. It's a little bit more specific in kind of what it's saying. So what we're going to start with, the technical name for this is a brace. I call it a squiggly bracket. But you do a brace, and then you do X, kind of a funny looking E, that means element of, and then you do a double strike R, and that's a symbol for real numbers. And then a vertical line, that means such that. So every single one of these for set notation is going to start in that same way. Same way. X, squiggly bracket, X, element of real numbers, such that. And then once you have that, then you just do the inequality notation. It's the same thing. Sometimes, like again, in upper level math, you might see this change a little bit, but in Algebra 2 land, the first part of all of these step builders are going to be X element of real numbers. Okay. The only thing that's going to change on the back page when you do the range also is for these two, for the range, instead of X, you use Y. That's the only difference. The interval notation actually stays exactly the same. Okay, so let's go and do this next one here. So again, we see we have another sandwich. X is between 0 and 4, but notice this time we have an open circle. So it's interval notation, same thing. So from 0 to 4, 0 includes it, so it gets a bracket. 4 does not, so that gets a parentheses. Inequality notation, again, it's a sandwich, 0, X, and 4, filled in, less than or equal to, open, just less than. And then step builder, again, always start with that same thing, X element of real numbers such that, and then just copy your inequality. We do always read domain left to right. Just like we're going to read range from low to high, domain is always left to right. Now, in this case here, if you ever see an arrow, that means it's going on forever and ever and ever. In this case, going out to positive infinity. Okay? So when I write my interval notation, again, I see it starting at 0, but it doesn't include 0, right? Remember, if it doesn't include parentheses, and we always put a parenthesis on infinity. I can talk a long time about that, but I won't. Just know that mathematically you can't actually ever get to infinity, so that's why we use our parentheses. For the inequality notation, the shortest way to write this is just say, well, we know x is greater than 0, so just that's it. So x is greater than 0, notice just greater than, open circle. If you want to be fancy about it and write it like a sandwich, you could do 0 less than x less than infinity. It would mean the same thing, but the shorthand, if it's going all the way forever and ever, you can just do greater than or less than that number. And remember, set notation, always starting the same way. And that's that. If it starts at a place and goes everywhere to the left, remember that's going to be at negative infinity. It's the same deal, right? So again, we're going negative infinity all the way to negative 8. Filled in circle, gets a bracket. Inequality, the shortest way to write it, x is less than or equal to negative 8. Set builder, x element real numbers, x less than or equal to negative 8. And again, if you want to be fancy about this one, you could have written this as negative infinity less than x less than negative 8, and that would be okay too. Last one of these before we get into the two-dimensional ones, which are the ones you really need to know how to do moving forward. So notice this has two pieces to it, right? So here, x can be this way, and of course this is negative 5, or x can be greater than 2. Okay, and if you remember back on the parent function, if you remember our rational function that looked like this, when we wrote the domain there, it was like negative infinity to 0, that was that piece, and then 0 to infinity. Same exact thing, right? So it goes negative infinity to negative 5, and again, both of them with a parenthesis since they both have an open circle. And then we go 2 to infinity, but 2 gets a bracket. And anytime you have those two different pieces, we're going to put that U in there that stands for union. Inequality notation, again, you just do both pieces individually. You kind of use what we did on these previous two. So this one goes to negative infinity. So we're going to say x is less than negative 5. That's that piece. And then we're going to write the word or, and then you do the right-hand piece. X is greater than or equal to 2. You do need that word or in there to be precise, because obviously an x value can't be both, so it's or either one or the other one. And of course, step builder is the exact same thing as inequality. Okay, so that's one-dimensional. So let's look at a couple of graphs. I've only got 4 of these, just in the interest of time. But we're going to do the same thing for the domain and then apply that same thing to the range values, just go looking at it from low to high. So just a quick reminder, anytime you're looking at a graph or a function, remember the domain is the x values that are defined. And we always read that left to right. And the range are the y values that are defined. And we always read those from low to high. Or if you want to think of it as bottom to top. Whichever way works for you. So what I'm going to do on these 4 graphs, I'm going to do all the domains first, then we'll go back and do all the ranges first. Okay. Now it's kind of hard to see on the screen, but I'll make it a little bit clearer. So notice this is an open circle. That's an open circle there, open circle there, and then those are a little bit easier to see. Okay. So remember, domain left to right. This number is -6, and that's 3. And I'm just going to write this in interval notation, just for the sake of time. But notice left to right, all we care about is what's on those x values, what x values are defined. So this is going to be from -6 to 3. Both of them are open circles, so they both get parentheses. And remember, that would be a sandwich also. I'll go and do the inequality notation. So -6 less than x less than 3. Step builder, same way. On number 2 here, again, domain, we don't care what it does, what's going up and down and all the stuff like that. We'll do that when we do the range. But for this one, all we care about is the x value. So again, that's -4, that's 2. So again, just going everything in between there. So it's going to be -4 to 2, closed circle, bracket, open circle, parentheses. Number 3 domain, -6 again, and 4. Open circle, closed circle. And then number 4 is kind of like the last one we had just a second ago on that previous page. Notice it's in 2 pieces. Okay, so here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a -8 here, -1, and that's a 1, and 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's a 9. So my first piece is from -8 to -1, parentheses on the -8, bracket on -1, and then we can again go from 1 to 9, both parentheses, and if you have 2 pieces, we put a U in between them. Remember, inequality notation would be -8 less than x less than -1, or 1 less than x less than 9. Now, what about the range? And again, important we see that it goes from low to high, the lowest point to the highest point. Okay? So in this, and going back to number 1 again, this line here is at 2, and this line here is at 5. So from low to high, it goes from 2 up to 5. And again, both of them are open, so open circles on both of those. If we are doing inequality notation, and I said this a minute ago, we do the same thing, it's a sandwich. So 2 is less than y is less than 5. And then step builder notation would be y is an element of real numbers such that 2 less than y less than 5. Okay, same exact concept. We're just going to use y instead of x's on the inequality or step builder notation. Now, for some of these, you got to be a little bit careful because you got to make sure you're going to the low point and all the way to the high point. Okay, so like on number 2, notice my low point is here at -3, and my high point is here at 6. And there's no other gaps. I know there's an open circle here, but that same value is here. So my range includes everything from -3 all the way to 6. So it's from -3 all the way to 6, and both of them will get a bracket because it touches that, and there's a closed circle here. We don't need to worry about that open circle. Sometimes we need to worry about it, but in this case, we don't need to worry about it. Okay. Same thing on number 3. This one's all kind of one big piece again, but again, low to high. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. That's at -7. And that's a +7. Go figure. And again, my lowest point is at -7. My highest point is at +7. And there's no gaps. And again, I know you might be saying, well, there's a gap right here, but there's not a gap here. So it is continuous through here. So my whole range is going to get a bracket on both of those. It gets to both of those numbers. And then our very last one. So again, my y values, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This goes out in -5. That's -1. That's 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So on this piece, and again, we're always going low to high, right? Low to high, low to high, low to high. So the lowest point is here. That's at -5. And it goes up to -1. Do that again. -5 to -1. But notice my low point is good. That gets a bracket. It includes that point. But my high points are the same, and they're both open. So that's going to get a parentheses. And then my second piece, now it starts here at +1 and goes all the way to 5. And again, I know there's an open here, but all I care about are the boundaries and make sure there's nothing weird going on between there. So it goes from 1 to 5, and both of those will get a bracket, and you put a U in between them. We will do a couple more examples when you get into class. We'll have a short assignment on this also. As always, if you have any questions, make sure, let me know, come to tutoring, send an email, what have you. Until next time, stay safe.